This is a download from the BBC of the World Football Phone-In, which is broadcast as part of the Up All Night programme on 5 Live from 2:30am to 4am on Saturday mornings. Here's the latest edition.
In the studio with me here is our African football expert, Peter Law. Peter, good morning.
Good morning, Don.
I know you're ready for this because you've been talking about it for the last half an hour as well. We have got Tim Vickery with us in Rio at the moment. Tim, good morning.
And a very good morning to you and everyone else.
He's covering everything to do with South American football and, of course, players from over there playing in our leagues as well, as is Sean Wheelock when it comes to North American football. Sean, good morning.
Good morning to you, Dutton. Good morning to everyone.
Good to have you with us. And Andy Brassel is based in Lyon. He covers everything to do with European football and players from over there playing in our leagues too. Andy, good morning.
Good morning, good morning.
So we have one more member who is infrequent member, but we're always glad to have him with us, Aidan Ormond, who covers everything to do with Australian and Asian football. Quite a wide remit, Aidan.
Yes, it is. And good morning, Dotton. Good morning, everyone around the world.
Let's just say hello, a quick hello to our other African correspondent this morning. The legendary Durasimi Thomas is in Ghana. Good morning, Durasimi.
Good morning. I'm in Sierra Leone at the moment.
Oh, well, I do apologise. But as long as we've got you on the line, that's the main thing. Good to have you with us. And there are questions already coming in on African football. I do want to pose this question, though, to Aidan Ormond, who's our Australia and Asia correspondent. And this is, I'm sure you're aware, Aidan, it is FA Cup weekend here in the UK, and Kaz in Portsmouth wants to know if the FA Cup has a high profile where you are, particularly in this year when the top teams are out. By the way, Kaz is in Portsmouth, as I said.
Hi, Kaz. Yeah, look, English football in Australia and particularly in Asia has a huge profile. So when it comes to the Premier League, when it comes to the FA Cup, absolutely. And it's certainly been noted in this part of the world that the Cup this year has got a little bit of an extra edge to it. The fact that the main clubs, the bigger clubs, aren't in it. So yes, to answer your question, absolutely. It's got a profile. It always has across all codes in Australia and certainly in Asia. Wherever you go, they do talk about English football. And the FA Cup is, of course, a part of that.
And where you are in North America, Sean Wheelock?
In terms of the Premiership, Dotton?
No, just thinking in terms of the FA Cup, does it have a profile at all in the United States?
The FA Cup is still not as popular as the Premiership, and it's simply television exposure. We only get a handful of FA Cup matches in every round, and it's something that Americans, although we love tournaments and competitions, right now, for instance, the college basketball finals is going on, and that's a tournament competition, and Americans really get behind that. The FA Cup is still a bit mystifying, even to some people who follow football on a casual basis. Now, the serious football fans, those that listen in my country and in Canada to this program every week, love the FA Cup. We get a chance to see the matches. But for instance, you don't get the final on free TV. You have to pay for it. Whereas on the Premiership, you're getting 4 or 5, a half dozen matches a week. It really just comes down to television exposure.
Durasimi Thomas, I know the Africans love English football. Do they love the FA Cup?
Oh, yes, most certainly. Barnsley, for one, have been followed with keen interest here because you have a lot of Liverpool, Chelsea, Arsenal fans, and Barnsley walks over Chelsea and Liverpool, so they'll be following with keen interest what's going to happen against Cardiff City. So, yeah, definitely same interest, nothing diminished compared to the Premiership, which is definitely big time.
And Peter Law, from an African football perspective, which are the tournaments to look out for? From us, for fans of African football over here?
There's a new competition, Dotton, just started out last week, which is the African Nations Championship, which is a new competition, an international competition for national teams made up of home-based African players rather than European professionals who are now dominating the Nations Cup. And it's certainly going to provide, I think, a lot of exposure for new talent, for perhaps new coaches to work with this talent. But the one thing I wouldn't like to think of is that it's just going to be a paradise for scouts and agents to take more talent away from Africa. I heard today that Everton have made a signing of a young 14-year-old Liberian.
Right, so that's something that Africa needs to watch out for. It starts competitions, but it will be a window of opportunity for scouts from overseas. Simon in Canterbury, you've got a question for Sean in North America. Yeah, go ahead.
First one. It's evening. It's about an American goalkeeper Arsenal we're looking at.
Sure, absolutely.
I think he plays for Colorado. I'm not quite sure, but
that Arsenal's looking at, or that Aston Villa was looking at?
I think both are.
Well, I think the goalkeeper you're referring to plays for Chivas USA. It's an American because Bouna Kondoul, who is Senegal's third-choice goalkeeper at the Africa Cup of Nations, is Colorado. So was it an American or was it an African?
The Bruno. Yeah, the Bruno thing sounds familiar. So yeah, it's probably that fella.
Well, there's Bouna Kondoul, who's a goalkeeper who went to university in America, and he is the only Major League Soccer player to have appeared in the Africa Cup of Nations in this year's competition. In case the question's about Brad Guzan, I will talk about him as well. Bouna Kondoul is an emerging footballer. Last year was his first opportunity to be number one, and he played for Colorado Rapids. The side struggles. It's almost a South American situation where they play in Denver, Colorado, which is a mile-high atmosphere. That's where the Major League Soccer All-Star match was, if you'll recall, back in July, and the United States Major League All-Stars defeated Celtic quite handily, and Gordon Strachan really complained about how the ball was moving and it was difficult and the ball sails. Bouna Kondoul can be very, very good, and he can be very, very bad. He's a bit erratic right now. To me, when I look at Bouna Kondoul, I don't see anybody who really has the ability to play Premiership football or even Championship football, certainly not to go into being number one.
Brad Guzan, actually.
That probably sounds a little more likely. Now, Brad Guzan is someone who I think not only can play Premiership football, but I think can be very, very good. I think he can be Brad Friedel stroke Casey Keller good. Brad Guzan was offered a contract to move to Aston Villa. He would be Villa's first choice right now if it weren't for the fact that he does not meet the international requirement. Now, in the English FA, you cannot get a work permit if you come out of an EU country unless you have appeared in 75% of your country's internationals over the last 2 years. Brad Guzan is still emerging. He's right now the number 4 goalkeeper for the United States. He was Casey Keller's backup at the Copa America, but he still has not gotten anywhere close to 75%. He wouldn't even be close to 10% on that standard. With that being said, he's 23 years old. Tim Howard is the next youngest American goalkeeper in that order, and he's 29 years old. Brad Guzan is going to be a star. Now, you have an appellate process. This is how Tim Howard moved to Manchester United in the summer of 2003. If there's another bid launched for Brad Guzan, and I suspect there will be in the summer transfer window, it's almost like a court case. I find it a really fascinating process. You have people submit essentially testimonials and recommendations. They would, for instance, put together dossiers saying, Brad Guzan, we believe him to possess world-class ability. These were his statistics over the last few years. Even though he doesn't meet 75% of the international requirement, he will factor into America and that type of thing. So Brad Guzan is someone who I think is definitely going to be headed to the Premiership. I look at him as a goalkeeper of the future for the United States. I don't think he'll be number one in this 2010 World Cup qualification cycle, although I would not be shocked if it did happen. In the 2014-2018 World Cup cycle, he is it. Outside of Tim Howard, again, who is 29 years old, there is no other goalkeeper anywhere near that standard in their 20s. Brad Guzan is really going to be a star. He has a Premiership goalkeeper's type body and mentality, and I think he'll do very well. I hope I didn't disappoint anybody on Bouna Kondoul and Durasimi. I don't know if you know about Kondoul, but honestly, I haven't been all that impressed with what I've seen in Major League Soccer.
We'll come to that in just a moment. Simon, thanks a lot for that. Andrew in Beckenham, good morning.
Hello, everyone. Good evening.
Hi, mate.
I've got a sort of a step back in time question for the panel.
Yeah, go ahead.
The '94 World Cup. I was in Rio with Tim at the time. We were colleagues because we were both teaching at the time, and I was wondering how many of those. Well, what those people are doing now, really. I mean, for example, I heard that Romario had recently become the coach of Vasco for about a day. Then he finally retired, and I know Dunga's now the manager of Brazil. So just wondering what happened to other players, and both Brazil and from Italy. I mean, for example, one of my other favourites was a guy called Mazinho, for example. Can you help me out there, Tim?
Andrew Stroud.
Yes.
Yeah, well, the Romario thing is great because one of his favourite activities, and I've suffered from this myself, is messing journalists around. And he did it memorably about 3 years ago. There's an absolute cretin of a Brazilian journalist called Renato Mauricio Prado, who doesn't need any help making himself look foolish. I think he makes himself look foolish every time he opens his mouth. But Romario gave an interview with him about 3 years ago when he hinted that maybe he was going to retire, and the journalist Renato Mauricio Prado went big on it. Romario retires, and it was all a lie, and so he was made to look very stupid. And Romario seems to have done this again just in the last week, because he gave one interview saying, "No, it's all over. I can't really play anymore." So they went big with the story of Romario announced his retirement, and then the next day he gave another interview saying, "No, I'm waiting for proposals while I go off to the Caribbean for a nice little holiday." So it's one of his favourite games, kind of messing journalists around and making journalists look stupid. Well, if we go through that Brazil side from '94, and Tafarel, the goalkeeper, has been doing some agent work. Jorginho, who was the right back, is now the assistant coach with Dunga. Cafu, who came on in the final, is still playing. A phenomenon, really, is still at Milan. Marcio Santos and Aldair, the centre-backs, I'm not too sure. Marcio Santos had a very, very strange career. Signed for Fiorentina soon after that World Cup on the basis that Fiorentina were owned by a film mogul who was going to introduce him to Sharon Stone, which perhaps was not the best way to run a career, and his career didn't really go too far afterwards. Aldair...
He was a good player, I thought.
They had a terrific centre-back partnership, but although they were well protected by the double act of Mauro Silva and Dunga. Mauro Silva was a terrific defensive midfielder who's now has been doing some media work in Brazil. The left back, well, at the start of the competition it was Leonardo, who's occasionally does media work for the BBC, but mainly spends his time at Milan. Working with them, and then Branco came in, and Branco is now, and he scored that wonderful goal with the free kick against Holland. Branco is now a director of the Fluminense club. Little Zinho, the left-sided midfielder, who was a good player, was playing until comparatively recently. One of the few of that team that never made it to Europe. Bebeto, Romario's terrific strike partner, has been flirting with agent work as well. And the guy who came on in the final, Viola, who was a sensation in Brazilian football for a little while, is still playing. He's one of the few members of that team still playing. And he was involved in a strange incident a couple of years back when he had some row with his wife, who denounced him to the police. And the police found that he had quite a powerful firearm there, Viola. And his excuse to try and get away with this thing that he had an unlicensed firearm was to say, "Well, I'm a collector." So obviously the next question was, "How many firearms do you possess?" And his answer was, "Well, that's the only one." So he wasn't very much of a collector.
It's my pleasure to introduce a former goalkeeper who's starred between the sticks for Reading, Newcastle, Portsmouth, West Ham, and in the last World Cup for Trinidad and Tobago.
Ibrahimovic, great save, big save by Shaka Hislop. He's a big match goalkeeper, and he proved it there. Larsson, Olbeck, great save by Shaka Hislop. Ibrahimovic. Oh, what a day for Shaka.
Big match goalkeeper. Welcome all the way from Connecticut, USA, where he now works as an ESPN analyst. Shaka Hislop, really good to have you with us, mate.
Thank you, Dalton. Good to be here.
Yeah, lots of jokes have come in already. Let me just throw you out. Let's get the jokes out of the way then. I think these are from your fans in the West Ham contingent. One of them about your good friend Brian Lara. He's put on a bit of weight, hasn't he?
It happens to all of us after we retire, unfortunately. I'm fighting back the pounds myself, but I think it's inevitable.
And tough one, but this is from Adain Barrow. Tough one, but how would you end a cup tie, is the question.
How would I end a cup tie? by not standing on the Millennium pitch, looking at Liverpool, live what should have been West Ham's trophy. That's a memory that will stay with me for a very long time, and unfortunately it was my last act in English football, but there you go.
Imran in Bradford, you've got a quick question for Shaka. Go ahead.
Yeah, good morning to you, Don. Yeah,
Hi,
my question to Shaka is that, he played under Kevin Keegan, at a time where Keegan played some unbelievable football. And does he think, King Keegan will replicate the same thing back at Newcastle? Because, I think any footballer would love to play a man like Kevin Keegan.
I think so, and I certainly hope so. Certainly here at ESPN, I went out on a real limb, and from the time Big Sam they parted companies with Newcastle, I started calling for Keegan to return. A lot of people were criticising me and saying that we're just looking for a feel-good factor, and there was no kind of long-term ambition or aspirations to bringing Keegan back. But I felt that's exactly what Newcastle needed. They needed to feel good again. It's been too long since people have come into that fantastic stadium full of optimism, and I just felt that is exactly what Newcastle needed at the time. I certainly hope that he goes on and brings back some of those days of the mid and mid to late 90s that I was so proud to be a part of. I'm still in touch with a couple of the players there, even though some of the players who were there ever since I was there, and even in the middle of that very disappointing run, 13 games I think it was without a win, the message was always that the training ground was just as it used to be back in 95, where the atmosphere, where people all of a sudden started coming to training, feeling happy about coming into training again.
Did Xhaka ever get over the torment of big market? Do you know what that's about, Xhaka?
Yes, anybody who spends too much time in the Northeast knows all about big market. Okay. And I've just about recovered.
For the rest of us, any chance of letting us in on the in-joke?
For the rest of you, you just got to go there. It's an experience. It's a real experience of Geordie culture, shall we call it?
Sure, you must have had a great time up there.
Oh, I really did. It was a fantastic place to be and a fantastic time to be in the Northeast. It really was.
You know, we've had a text from Damien in Worcester who says, does Xhaka know that you can hear the odd bit of Geordie through the Trinidadian? Come on, you Irons. Jim in Kent says, although I don't support any of Xhaka's old teams, I thought he was not only a great keeper but a great man and played the game in great spirit.
Thank you very much. I do appreciate that. I certainly tried to.
A very nice comment there. Let's go to our callers, 0500 909 693. George.
Hi, mate. Are you all right?
I'm very well, thanks very much. Hey, you sound exactly like Xhaka Hislop.
I do, Jordan. He was a Kelly player when he played for the Toon.
Thank you very much, George.
You're welcome, mate.
But you've got a general question for our experts.
Well, Kevin Keegan has got approximately 50 million to spend, right?
Yeah.
Now he wants rid of 6 players. He's getting rid of 6 players, which is 2 defenders, 2 centre players, and a striker, right? Now what he wants is 2 strikers, 2 centre players, and 4 defenders. Now what sort of people can you recommend?
And we'll give this again. He wants 2 strikers.
2 strikers, 4 defenders,
right,
and 2 centre players.
Okay, 2 centre players.
Left and right.
Okay, I'm going to ask all our experts to give us recommendations for their regions. I'm sure Kevin Keegan's listening. Kevin, make sure you got a pen and paper. It might take a while here.
I've got a pen and paper here.
Oh, so you're going to pass it on to him then? Okay, fair enough. Let's start off with Andy Brassel in Europe. In Europe, can he find a couple of strikers, a couple of defenders, and a couple of central players there?
Certainly, but that is an entire bloody team, you realise. Come on. Actually...
It's 15 million quid, mate. He's
Newcastle have been linked with a couple of St Etienne players. Bafétimbi Gomis, who has been rather erroneously called the new Didier Drogba, but would nevertheless do very well in the Premiership. He's big burly striker, just 22 years old. He's got a powerful shot with either foot. He's very strong, very quick. So I think he'd do very well over there. Even if they do buy him, he will be sadly overpriced. But he's got the ability to develop into something pretty special, I think.
Right, and the warning should be don't buy anybody from Marseille because they got beaten by a non-league team the other day, didn't they?
That's right, a 5th fifth division, Karkfu, which is incredible. And they're the bottom three of the fifth division as well. So it's like the equivalent of losing to, I guess, is it Northwich at the moment? I don't know. It's so hard to follow the conference from over here.
I'm sure it is. Durasimi Thomas in Ghana, we want some strikers, defenders and central players for a team with loads of money.
Well, I wish I've been watching the African Championship over the last weekend, but the names that comes to mind in attack, some two Cape Verdeans who play in Portugal, not really like, every weekend, basically not popular guys. So one of them is called Lito, not doing badly. And last season there was also another Cape Verdean who was really banging in the goals. He was called Daddy. Now, the two come to mind because already with £15 million, I think those two could be affordable. In defence, just yesterday or Friday, there was this big program in the African Sports Network of BBC, Fast Track. The program is called Fast Track, and there was a big feature on Newcastle United. So I think Africans definitely are part of Keegan's plan in looking ahead to next season.
Well, he's got Obafemi Martins there, hasn't he?
Sorry?
I was saying Obafemi Martins is there for him.
Yes, Obafemi Martins is already there, as a striker. And there's couple of other players. I know Abibi talked about Marseille, and there was before that Jeremy's there, and before I think Abibi went to Newcastle before going to Portsmouth or something like that. I can't quite remember, but African players, I think, is part of Keegan's plan. So
one striker then.
More.
So one striker for him, Durasimi. Who would it be for you?
I'll go for that Lito guy in Portugal. They are not really playing badly. I don't know if our European man may have heard about him, but I followed him quite a little bit, and I know he's
I'm not sure
he's good.
Durasimi, but I know Daddy very well, and that's a really good pick. I have to agree with you there. He's from the Cape Verde, actually. He's Portuguese born, but he declared for Cape Verde at the start of the season. Really good start to the season with Osasuna in Spain, having moved from Belenenses in Lisbon. Slowed up a little bit, but he's tall, good physical presence, and a good finisher. There's no reason why he wouldn't do really well.
Okay, and here in the UK, Peter Law's with me. Do you agree with Durasimi's choice, or are there other players? Name one striker, one defender, and one central player for Newcastle.
I think certainly one person they could be looking at, because I think Newcastle's biggest problem in years has been defending. John Mensah, the Ghanaian central defender, who I think would be a good acquisition for them. They certainly seem to like African players up there. I'd perhaps nominate Abu Trika, the Egyptian midfielder, although he's getting a little old nowadays. I don't know quite if he'd have the legs for the Premiership. And in terms of a striker, I'd name perhaps Gervinho, who's a young boy playing in Le Mans and with the Côte d'Ivoire Olympic side, and who did play a couple of games, I think, at the Nations Cup.
A lot of suggestions we're getting for Newcastle. Sean Wheelock, who would your picks be? One striker, one defender, one central player for Newcastle?
Well, for the striker, someone we talk about a lot on this program.
Landon Donovan.
Donovan. Landon Donovan's going to be my midfielder. He's not a central player. He's an outside player. Landon Donovan's my midfielder. In terms of a central player, in Major League Soccer, they have a tendency to import that number 10 role, so it's a little difficult on that. But Donovan is my midfielder. People think of him as being old. He's only 26, and I know that he would like to play English football one day. Josie Altidore is the footballer Don I was referring to, the 18-year-old, born in America of Haitian parents. He is going to be in the Premiership next year. He's going to move, I feel, with 98% certainty during the summer transfer window. As far as a defender, a big, strong, quick central defender who's played in the World Cup in 2006, played in the Copa America in 2007, my good friend, the Kansas City Wizards captain, Jimmy Conrad. All three could step in and, I think, play first-team football in the Premiership.
Right, great. And from you, Tim, who would it be for you?
Well, I hope whoever turns up, they turn up saying, away the lads, with the same style that Jimmy Carter did when he was President of the United States and he went up to Newcastle. As defender, centre-back, I think there'll be a big auction for him this summer. Young Argentinian at Racing Santander in Spain, Ezequiel Garay, who's a huge centre-back with a thumping foot, the kind of centre-back who spreads confidence throughout the defensive line, although the big clubs are interested in him, the likes of Barcelona and even, I think, Manchester United. If you can't get him, one here in Brazil, Thiago Silva of Fluminense is very, very classy. Would have to learn to defend higher up the field, but very classy. Central midfielder, there's a young man at Sao Paulo just broken into the Brazil squad called Hernanes, who's modelled his game on Pirlo of Italy and Milan. I think he's a blossoming talent. Left-sided midfielder, Damian Escudero of Vélez Sarsfield in Argentina, being used wrongly at the moment, in my opinion, as a support striker. I think he's a left-sided midfielder with lots of thrust. And centre forward, a young Colombian who plays his football with River Plate in Argentina, Radamel Falcão Garcia, is the most promising centre forward in the South American game. Has a very classy, cuts in wonderfully well on the diagonal, and has a prodigious leap. Leaps really, really well. Scores lots of goals in the air, and would, providing he can stay fit, which has been a problem with him, could I think cope with the Premiership. I've got a quick question for Shaka, if that's all right.
Yeah, go ahead.
What I'd like to know, Shaka, I mean, after you kept the Swedes at bay with that fantastic performance in the World Cup, and kept England at bay for almost the entire 90 minutes, you know, Trinidad and Tobago, they've got 1 point going into that last game against Paraguay. You must have been disappointed, I would imagine, not to have been selected for that last game against Paraguay.
Yeah, but it's a decision that Leo Bernacca made that I understood fully and accepted fully. Kelvin Jack had played all the way through the qualifiers and did very well. I've gone on record and saying that if Kelvin didn't play, we wouldn't have qualified, and actually stand by that. Even as another goalkeeper, strangely. But and he decided to go with Kelvin Jack for the final game. We were still in with a shout to go through, but it's a decision that I understand and respect. You know, I think it was very brave of Kelvin to give up the starting shirt right before the first game, as he did. To be honest, if it was me, I probably would have hobbled on and called for a substitute after 5 minutes. But he was a big man to do it, and I have no problems with the decision that Leo Bernacca made. No problems at all.
And if you were between the sticks for Newcastle right now, Shaka, who would you like to see defending? One defender that you'd like to see in front of you?
I don't know, and it's tough to say. You know, I think for me, it's all about character and finding players that fit into that Newcastle character. When I was there, we famously, as we all know, we didn't defend, and which wasn't a problem for me, really. You know, it doesn't bother me when I concede, but I like to play in teams that entertain, and even, as I say, even if it doesn't mean I have a big goal against average, I like to play in teams that entertain, and games that, you know, even as a goalkeeper you enjoy playing in. So for me, it's I expect Keegan to go the same formula, defenders who can attack, and then goalkeepers who have to be rather thick-skinned, you know, as a result. Who I'd like to see in front of me, it's tough to say. I really couldn't tell you right now.
But, George, don't say that we didn't do Keegan's job for him tonight. Well, we've got several legendinos with us, and now to a man whose CV includes the likes of QPR, Sampdoria, Lecce, Sunderland, West Brom, and who's now making a name for himself in Toronto.
Wozniak upended. Bay goes on. Dickey, oh, he's done it! Oh, Danny Dickey, with virtually the last kick of the season at BMO Field. That's why they love him. It's 2-2. It's Dickey again.
Live from Washington, D.C., Daniel Salvatore Dickio, or Danny Dickio to you and me. Danny, good to have you with us, mate.
Thanks for having me on, guys. Good evening to all you all.
Yeah, it's a real pleasure. You'd better explain the significance of that goal, first of all.
I think the one you just had on there was actually the last game of the season where we played the eventual finalists, New England, and we were 2-1 down, and I came on at half-time. I was actually injured 6 weeks before that, but wanted to be involved in the last game, and I managed to get the nod at half-time. And we actually played really well in that game, and we hadn't qualified for the playoffs or anything, but we just wanted to put on a good show for the fans at the end of the season, and we knew we was playing against a really good team, Stevie Nichols' team, incidentally, and it was last minute in the game, and I kind of saw the keeper off his line. The ball bounced nicely from me, and I managed to lob him from like outside the box, and the crowd just went into hysterics. It's like we won the game or actually won the championship that day.
And you also scored the first ever goal in Toronto history, didn't you?
Yep, I scored the first goal against Chicago many months ago, it seems now. But that was an eventful day as well, because managed to get myself on the score sheet and score the first goal, and then 30 minutes later I got sent off.
Well, that's the breaks, isn't it?
The breaks, yeah.
We had a text already from Bez who asked, how is Danny Dichio doing in Major League Soccer? Let me just remind our listeners, if you've got a question or comment for Danny, pick up the phone, give him a call now, 0500 909 693. And a lot of people did wonder how you found your way to Major League Soccer after playing, well, in the Italian leagues, in the English leagues and so on. How did you manage that?
Well, it was something I always wanted to do towards the end of my career. Obviously played in England, being a London boy as well, so I'd moved around all of England, and I played at Preston, which was a great club for me. We managed to get in the kind of top half of the division in the playoffs the year before, and really wanted to get the club, which had like a great history and never been in a Premiership, wanted to kind of complete that before I moved out to America. It was always my kind of dream to come out and play here, and I eventually want to live out these ways. So my wife's got an American passport, and I went to train with Chicago and had offers from other clubs, but nothing concrete. And also the green card was a kind of opposition at the time, because I didn't have one. So Toronto gave me a call when I was in the last couple of months of my contract at Preston and said, look, you don't need a green card or anything to come out here. We want you now. We can get this deal done by the weekend. And it kind of bankrolled from there, and the following week I was out there playing and making my debut in the MLS.
Although I understand that the Toronto football fans haven't quite got the hang of the art of football chanting yet. Apparently they've got a special chant for you.
Yeah, they're giving it a real good go. We've got a big kind of European following in Toronto. We've got loads of English, loads of Scottish and Irish as well, which kind of expats out here. But we've got lots of Portuguese and a big Italian following as well. So soccer is really big out here, and the fans have incorporated all what they see back home in Europe on the TV, and they've been to places that they want to kind of establish at our ground now. Now our ground on a match day is bouncing. I say to any English fan, if they want to come out to a league game, they've got to make it one of our home games, because it is a true experience. And as you said before, they've got a special chant for myself on the 24th minute when I scored the first goal against Chicago, and it's nice that they do it for me. It's kind of embarrassing at times.
So every 24th minute of a game, what do they chant?
They've got like a Danny Dichio kind of chant to an old kind of song. It's an old kind of, I don't know if it's a Beatles song or I really don't know, but they sing it in a kind of rhythm where the whole ground kind of pipes up and starts singing it.
We've got a text from Ant in Aylesbury who says, great to hear Danny Dichio, a.k.a. Melody, on the radio. He was a great player for us at Sunderland, so hats off to him. Is he still DJing?
No, I had to leave all my turntables and all my records behind. My wife stipulated that I had to leave that all behind. That was part of my youth. I've still got like 100 of my best records that I just couldn't let go.
But nevertheless, you were a DJ, and you can't remember the chant that they chant for you in Toronto.
I can, but it's weird. It's like it hums into a. Oh, da 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 da. That's it.
Hey, and Danny, guess what? We played it a minute too late. It was 2:25 we played that.
Man.
Hope you don't mind.
No, the Toronto fans will be unhappy with that.
I know. I mean, sometimes slight time difference between us and them. But I'm sure that made you feel at home. Listen, we've got Shaka Hislop with us as well. And both of you, I was just minded of the fact that both of you made the journey over from this side to over there. I don't know if you want to exchange notes on how you both fared.
No, I'd like to say good evening to Shaka. great pro back in his day and stuff. Played against him many a time, tried to score against him many a time. So I've got
Never scored, Danny. I'm proud of that.
How you doing, Shaka? You
I'm all right, mate. How you doing?
I'm good, thanks.
Good.
Sammy says hello to you as well. Colin Samuels, he said to say hello to you.
All right, yeah. I play with Sammy. I play with Carl Robinson as well at Portsmouth. Great guys. And you were right in what you were saying about the Toronto fans. I actually have not played in Toronto, but everybody says that is easily the best place to go in the league, and it really is a real experience once you get up there.
Yeah, you got to get up there. Try and get up there and see what it's like for yourself.
I will.
So how have the experiences differed then between you, do you think?
I don't know. I don't know. It's tough to say. Obviously, we couldn't be further apart with me being all the way down in Texas and Danny being north of the border. Certainly, and he came into an expansion team. I came into a team that was full of expectation, and really at the end of our first season, Colin Clark lost his job because we didn't get to the MLS Cup final, which isn't a pressure that Toronto would have to deal with, certainly their first season in the league. So our experiences are differed, certainly, I'm sure, professionally as much as anything. But at the same time, I get the feeling that we both enjoyed it just as much as each other.
Yeah, definitely. This is a main thing why I'm sure Shaka came over as well, and I came over. I didn't want to pit it down into the lower leagues of English football. I wanted to come and play my last few years, 2, 3, 4, wherever it's going to be, and enjoy my soccer, enjoy where I'm living off the pitch, and bring my family to a place where I know that they're going to enjoy living and try and get into the way of life that I like. That's why I came over to these sides of the water.
Yeah, and you certainly will get that over here. It really has been a great experience for me and my family.
Yep. Well, Danny, as you heard, Shaka couldn't resist reminding you that you never scored past him. but don't worry, because Frida in Tyneside also wants to remind you about a goalkeeper you never scored past. Frida, good morning.
It is on Wearside, by the way.
Oh, apologies. But you are through to Danny Dichio.
Yes. I just wanted to ask Danny if he remembers when he played for Sunderland.
Yep.
We played Aston Villa one time at Sunderland, and you scored a goal, but it was disallowed because James, who's now goalkeeper for England, he bumped into one of his own players, and the ref disallowed your goal because he'd been fouled.
I thoroughly remember that, Frida. It was late in the game as well. The last minutes,
and we ended up drawing when we should have won, you know.
And I think that would have pushed us up, into maybe.
Yeah, well, that season we ended 7th, didn't we?
Yeah, we had a great season then.
Yeah. People forget that, they keep talking about Sunderland as being, down there, but they forget we had a couple of really great seasons.
When we first came up and Super Kev was on fire and Big Quinny was on fire.
Yeah.
We had a good team.
You know he's our chairman now, don't you?
I do, yeah. I keep in touch with some of the boys back there. I spoke to Super Kev the other day and he's on fire in the championship.
He is, isn't he?
There were good times up there with good fans, and I really, really take that. So my two boys were born up in Durham up there. So they're both little Mackhams, and I remind them they get their Sunderland shirts now and again out. So
well, I wish you luck anyway.
Thanks,
in Toronto.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thanks very much for the call. Do you really call him Super Kev?
Super Kev, you have to keep reminding him that it's only with a little S though, not a capital S.
Dan, he's still got the sense of humour then, anyway.
Yeah.
Hey, it's a real pleasure having you talk to us, I really appreciate it.
No, anytime, guys, anytime. Yeah. Say hello to Spoonie for me as well when you see him.
And good luck to watch against Washington, D.C. tomorrow. Well, yes, on the line. Yeah, he will. It's very true. Yes, on the line now from Hamilton, the capital of Bermuda, we have the former Manchester City and Bermuda striker, Manchester City legend, Shaun Goater, MBE. Shaun, good morning.
Hello, good morning to all in the UK and around the world.
And I hope that chant brought back some sweet memories for you.
Yes, but it seems so long ago from hearing the cheers of Feed the Goat. But I'm still involved in football, and it is nice to hear.
Did it ever get on your nerves?
No, because when they're singing that, I was doing well.
I must say, for me, I always related you to Clyde Best because he was the first Bermudan star over this side. I wonder, was he a hero for you too?
Funny enough, Clyde had sort of reached the pinnacle of his career around the sort of mid-70s, and I was only 5, and we didn't have as much media coverage from TV and radio as much as we do today. So I actually left Bermuda, going obviously to the UK around the late 80s, and Clyde. It wasn't a big name in Bermuda because I never really knew too much of the history. Didn't know too much about Clyde. But funny enough, when I was in England, that's all I heard. And I was thinking, I don't know Clyde. Who's Clyde Best? And so obviously going back home to Bermuda a few times, asking the question, that's when it dawned on me that he had sort of finished playing long before I had sort of got into it. And how a wonderful job he had done, not only for me, but for pretty much all black players.
Shaka, I know you're about to leave us, but I wonder if just briefly you could just talk with Sean about how similar your two experiences were, both coming from the Caribbean, both playing for your national sides and having to travel across the Atlantic to do that, whilst you were playing in English teams.
Well, I think the smile on Sean's face throughout his career kind of said it all, and I certainly felt the same, and I started to touch on the last question. At times you have to pinch yourself and realize, to realize that you actually are living your boyhood dreams, and we took it as such I know Sean felt the same as I did. He respected the opportunities that he was given. He respected the fact that he was living a boyhood dream, which many players don't, and sadly so. And I hasten to add as well that I can't remember Sean scoring on me either.
I knew that was coming. And as much as as much as I'd like to say I did score past Shaka, I can't recall it myself. So I have to agree with him. As much as I want to lie to the thousands that are out there listening, I can't actually say I scored past Shaka. So I think he's got me on that one.
Listen, our memories fail us.
I think you're probably the only two strikers in English football who haven't scored me. I thank you for that.
We're just about to call up Alan Shearer to see if he scored ever against you.
He's fast asleep now. Yeah, I'm just trying to. He's asleep. Don't call him. Don't disturb him. Sure, nice to hear you, mate. Nice to hear your voice.
All right.
And Shaka,
good work, mate.
Shaka, it's been a real pleasure. Thanks very much, sir.
Dalton, thank you very much. Thanks to everybody on the panel, all the listeners. It really has been a pleasure. It brought back some really good memories. I've thoroughly enjoyed this.
Sean, we've got our North American football correspondent with us as well, who covers the CONCACAF regions, including Bermuda. And Sean Wheelock, I wonder if you've got a question for Sean Goater yourself.
Yeah, it's a real pleasure to be on with Sean Goater. I always support any CONCACAF players, American, Bermudan, Trinidadian, Tobagan, or otherwise, who make their way into Premiership football. And Sean, it's a pleasure to have you on the World Football Phone-In. I was hoping you could talk about what you've done now with Bermuda, the fact that Bermuda, and I don't think many of our listeners are aware of this, actually compete in the American Third Division, and how you've really done that as a way to get more jobs, professional experience for your young Bermudan internationals, and how you hope to have the Bermudan club translate into success at the CONCACAF level.
Yes, that's primarily what I've done. I've set up a professional team in Bermuda, which, as you say, is in the American Third Division. And basically what it does is it's pretty much our national team to play week in, week out in the professional league in the USL second division, which is the American Third Division. It allows our players to play at a professional level, and therefore when they're called upon for the national team, they play consistently for a number of weeks and months. So when called upon, i.e. in the World Cup games, we're better prepared as opposed to what was currently happening prior to the setting up of my team, the Bermuda Hawks, as we call it. The national team played whenever there was an international game, and that tended to be every sort of 6 or 7 months, and the team pretty much got together 4 weeks prior to that game and played. A typical amateur setup, and and so the results were amateur as well. So, this has mainly been set up to give opportunities for Bermuda players and perhaps get one or two playing over in Europe, or if they can, over in the MLS, and therefore to improve the whole national team when they return from the top clubs.
Well, while the likes of Chelsea and Real Madrid will always splash the cash on marquee big names, increasingly clubs are putting most of their energy into competing to sign promising youngsters from around the world before they become big names. But the clubs that produce them are crying foul as they see the youngsters they've nurtured being spirited away for next to nothing. This is a particular live issue in Argentina at the moment. We can talk to Fernando Troiani, who's the Latin American football scout for Swiss club Grasshoppers Zurich. So it's, I suppose, your field of work then, Fernando. How big a problem is it in Argentina?
Yeah, hi, Dotson. It is quite a big issue right now. I tell you what, I just got back from the Punta Cup, which is an under-18 tournament in Punta del Este, Uruguay, and I am just so gutted because several of the participants decided not to show up in the last minute, in a way to prevent their players from being poached, stolen by European clubs.
Well, they won't actually enter themselves into tournaments because they don't want anybody to see their players.
Yeah, because it's a good way to measure up against other rivals and all that. But if there are international observers and people trying to deprive you of your talent, they just pull out. It's normal.
But why can't the teams there defend their assets, if you like?
Well, I'll explain to you how it's done in international football. Unless you have signed a professional contract, you don't have real control over the players. So what they do is they approach the players and their families. Even if they are, 12 years old, they are coerced into not signing professional contracts, and they just leave for a bunch of dollars, euros, or sterling, whatever, and there's only so much you can do about it if you're a club in Latin America. There is a FIFA-regulated concept called Ausbildung und Schädigung, which is the formation rights, the development of the player and the training rights, and that's about all you can get for the player. It's really pocket money if you think about it.
But having said that, going the other way and depriving these kids of the opportunity to play for European teams, bigger teams, it almost seems as if the Argentinian clubs are breaking the Bosman ruling. Here we have a player, we're not going to allow him to play because we don't want anybody else to sign him.
Yeah, I know, and it's a sensitive issue because, of course, there's the issue of freedom of work, and you have to choose wherever you're going to work. But having said that, what happens is you weaken the domestic leagues. They become really boring, and some of these players are much more known in Europe than in Argentina or Uruguay, for the matter, because they haven't even played one match here.
Now, I know that you're on the hunt for a particular player on behalf of Grasshopper Zurich in South America, and you haven't you haven't gotten anywhere yet. Perhaps you could tell Tim the player you're looking for, and he could solve your problem just like that.
Yeah, I certainly hope so. Tim, I'm looking for a central midfielder, mostly defensive-minded, and the trend in European football now. They are all looking for big guys, 190 centimeters tall, Patrick Vieira type, And I just thought about two Brazilians, Nilton of Corinthians and Romulo of Flamengo, but lucky me, both of them got cruciate ligament injuries. So maybe you have another idea.
There's been a lot of that recently in Brazil, a lot of knee injuries. I remember the last time we were on together, Fernando, we were talking about players in South America who hadn't yet moved, and the one who we both agreed on, I couldn't understand what took him so long to get to Europe, was Claudio Maldonado. the Chilean midfielder. We talked about a year ago, that the last time you were on, and look at him now. He's in the Fenerbahce side.
Yeah, but I have one word for you: pint-sized. That's the problem with him, 170 something. And now my club and everyone else, I guess, are looking for 190 centimeters tall and dominant like Vieira or Yaya Toure, and that I think is quite hard to find, at least in South America.
Also, I tend to think they're wrong, Fernando. For that particular position, the holding midfielder.
Totally.
And who's the best in the world in this position? And for me, Mascherano. Previously, who was the best in the world in this position? Perhaps Makaleli. And these are small guys.
Absolutely.
And Dotton always laughs at me when I use this phrase, but I think for that position, a low centre of gravity is essential, because this is someone who's going to do most of his work on the floor, tackling or making the tackle easier for the centre-back just behind it. I remember a year ago you praising a very similar player, Gargano of Danubio, who since has gone to Napoli. There's one... again, he's a player who's suffered an injury at the moment. A guy called Fabrizio of Cruzeiro, who came up the ranks with Corinthians, spent some time in Japan, and has just come back to Cruzeiro. And right at the start of the year, when Cruzeiro were playing some fantastic stuff in the Libertadores, and they're playing all right at the moment, and they beat San Lorenzo 3-1 yesterday, but their football was better earlier in the year when Fabrizio was playing. But he was playing in that holding role, but playing the first pass out of defence with a lot of composure and a lot of quality, that first pass. Ramirez, who's a very interesting midfielder with Cruzeiro, terrific lung power, getting box to box.
87-born, black-skinned, very, very interesting.
That's right, yeah. Getting into the penalty area. He was a better player when he had Fabrizio behind him to make that first pass. So he's an interesting player. But there's a player I'd love to ask you about, because I haven't seen him, but I was told about him last year, and I've just been told about him again when I was in Buenos Aires last week. A young guy coming up the ranks at Boca Juniors called Benavides, who people are telling me he's a young, I think he's an 18-year-old central midfielder. People are telling me there at Boca Juniors that Benavides has the potential to be better than either Gago or Banega. So do you know anything about Benavides, and is this true?
Well, I will have to disagree on that, because, he comes from the same school of Boca Juniors, and Gago and then Banega, and he does have a very good passing game, but again, he's very small. He doesn't win as many balls, and I don't think he has the same kind of potential, and I would imagine he would go to a lesser league when he's ready. He's not going to play for one of the top clubs in the world, and I, on the other hand, would point you in another direction. River Plate, they have an incredible holding midfielder in that style that you and I seem to enjoy so much. The Mascherano type, the anchorman, as they call them in England. His name is Santiago Gallucci, and if you have been with Sergio Batista in the national team, you must have seen him. Incredible. It's like the spitting image of Mascherano, but probably a tad better in terms of potential.
I'll look out for him then. And just as a last word on our central midfielder, again, physically he doesn't fit this build that you're looking for, but I think he's a terrific player, who is Hernanes of Sao Paulo in Brazil, who has based his game a lot on Pirlo of Milan, and is a terrific all-round marking, passing midfielder. I think he's a good player, Hernanes, but physically he's much more lightweight than what your club seems to be after.
Okay, Fernando, thanks very much. Fernando Troiani, their scout for Grasshopper Zurich. But Sean Wheelock, you're with us still. What about in the American leagues then, in Major League Soccer? What percentage of foreign players playing in that league?
It's a percentage that probably hovers at around 25%. Major League Soccer is very protective of this. Now, Again, 28-man squads. Of those are 18 senior squad members and then 10 developmental squad members. So it's essentially the de facto youth side. They don't actually participate in youth play or youth competitions, but the developmental squad or footballers limited to the age of 23 or younger. Now, in total, the 13 American-based Major League Soccer sides are allowed 8 foreigners on the developmental squads combined. Toronto FC, which is the lone MLS side based outside of the U.S., of course, in Canada, is allowed 10, but that includes Americans as well in that list. And Major League Soccer is so protective of this because as great as the old North American Soccer League was, the original American Top Flight, really a school of thought, and one that I subscribe to, says that one of the reasons that the league failed was despite all of the greatness, they never put an emphasis on the American player. Now, the North American Soccer League had a time where out of your 11 on the pitch, you had to have 2, in quotations, North Americans, but often were the case, those North Americans were actually Brits with Canadian passports, and while you had Pelé and Best and Cruyff and Beckenbauer and Cubillas and really almost all of the big names of football at the time in the 70s and 80s, there was not the development of the American player. And outside of those first level, those A level and even B plus level foreign footballers, because there wasn't the development of the American player, there was simply a lack of fan interest. People wanted to see their own countrymen. They wanted to see the young 18, 19-year-old Americans coming through. So Major League Soccer has really tried hard to find the balance. They want to have David Beckham. They want to have Juan Pablo Angel. They want to have Cuauhtemoc Blanco, but they also need room for the Landon Donovans of the world. And, of course, players like Taylor Twellman, the good young American players that can really contribute, can become stars, maybe can eventually go into the national side or even be sold to a Premiership club.
Ira, you'll be pleased to know that your attendance has already been noted. Dale has sent me a text saying the Uxbridge Massive at last. I didn't know you remember. Listen, it's the World Football Phone-In special tonight, up all night, right through till 5 o'clock, talking football in Australia, Asia, Europe, North America, South America and Africa. And on the line from New Zealand, we've got the ex-Coventry, Arsenal and Wolves striker Bobby Gould. Bobby, of course, went on to manage Wimbledon to their 1988 FA Cup final triumph over Liverpool, plus Coventry and the Welsh national side. Bobby's currently working with his son Jonathan, the ex-Celtic and Coventry keeper in New Zealand. Bobby, sounds like a tough life for you lot.
Really tough. It's my 4th summer on the bounce.
And you're watching Sorry?
I'm due to come home on Wednesday as well, so that'll be the 5th one. It's really, really nice.
And you're watching a game as we speak as well.
Yes, over in New Zealand, in the Southern Hemisphere here, they've just started their Winter League, and when Jonathan came over 3 years ago, he started an academy. They had a Summer League, which was 8 franchise teams, and they were made to start an academy, and what we've actually done with the academy now, we play them in the Napier League, Senior Napier League, and we've got 15-year-olds and 16-year-olds, and similar to your American commentator there, the situation is we are trying to breed our own, and we have Ryan Nelson in the Premier League, Blackburn, and Killen at Celtic, this is the effort, and I was just talking to Jonathan, my son. I actually started in Coventry City in the 4th team, which is the Coventry City B team, and we played in the Works League, and the development from that was quite fantastic. The amount of players that went into the football combination and then the Central League with the soccer, reserve soccer, and then we all went on to play first team football.
Bobby, we haven't forgotten you over here, mate. You don't need to give us the rundown. We know we can hear you periodically on 5 Live Zone.
I've been watching the cricket as well. I've got to be I was with the lads at the Test match at Napier where we won, and I really enjoyed that. That was my first time at a Test match, so I'm taking in all sports as well, as all people do within sports.
I was about to say, listeners catch you on Fight and Talk periodically as well, but our own Australian and Asian expert is Aidan Orman. He's in Australia, and I don't know, Aidan, if you've got any piercing questions for Bobby Gould directly.
Bobby, good to see you down in New Zealand. I wanted to ask you about the O-League. I think, is it Waitakere versus Kossa from Solomon Islands? So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, we played Waitakere last week. We gave them the run around in the first half, and then we had a player sent off. And I think they were a little bit nervous, but apprehensive because they've got a busy game schedule coming up, Aidan, really, to be perfectly honest. But I've got to say, I've been so impressed with the Australian A-League this year. You know, we've got, I say we because of New Zealand, we've got Wellington Phoenix in there, the gates that they had when Beckham turned up, and I just think the Australian A-League is going to take off in the next 5 years. I've got to say that.
Yeah, look, it is. It's heading in the right direction. But we should explain that there is actually a sort of a Champions League in Oceania called the O-League, and the New Zealand team Waitakere is playing Kossa of Solomon Islands.
That's right, yeah, and we've got some good players that come out of Solomon Islands, and just at this moment, New Zealand under-23 sides have qualified to the Olympic Games, and they went up and they played in a tournament in Fiji, and Solomon Islands were the main contenders. And unfortunately for them, they got 2 players sent off, and New Zealand are now through to play in Beijing in August, which is a fantastic feat for New Zealand football.
Well, and you're absolutely right with Wellington Phoenix in the A-League. Like Sean was saying with the Toronto side in the MLS, which is playing outside of the country, we have Wellington Phoenix from New Zealand playing in the A-League. And what a terrific first season. Despite ending on the bottom of the league, 442 named them as the club of the year.
They had to be, because the way the commercial department went about selling the football club was unbelievable. And to bring Beckham over with the Galaxy was an outstanding success. I coach in the academy at Hawke's Bay, where I am with Jonathan, and we had 16 people here. I'm just going to get a kick of the ball. And I kicked it. I standing behind the goal.
Did you score?
No, I didn't catch it. I kicked it because I've got one finger in my mobile phone to the other.
Bobby, can you kick the ball to Australia? I'll try and control it over here. It's not too far. It's just over the ditch.
Yeah, no, it's a good pass as well. All the lads at Coventry City wouldn't believe that.
Brian called in to ask any news of former Leeds legend Tony Yeboah. Peter Law.
Yes, from what I know, he's retired nowadays and is very much a businessman up in Kumasi, where he came from, up in Ghana, in northern Ghana.
Hiral, can you fill us in any more on that?
I think Joe Simi that you mentioned in the past, that he's doing well as a businessman, and obviously still has his legions of fans all around the world.
Well, I've got news for you, because I've been speaking to him. Tony Yeboah, the only man in history to win back-to-back BBC Goal of the Month awards against Liverpool and Wimbledon in the autumn of 1995, and the man whose name was behind the defacing of many a Yorkshire Electricity Board hoarding during his time at Leeds. Leeds fans altered the acronym YEB to add the letters OAH in honour of him. So, what is Tony Yeboah doing now?
First of all, I'd like to thank everybody in England, especially the Leeds. I would like to thank them very, very much, because without their support, maybe I can't be that level. Your question, at the moment, we have the 2 big hotels in Ghana at the moment.
So you've given up football entirely?
Yes, I can say that, because it was my decision that after the football I want to do something different with my family. We was trying to, do something, without maybe football.
You spent some great times here in England in the 90s with Leeds United. What are your greatest and most cherished memories of having played football in England? What do you remember most?
Oh, it's a lot. I was so happy the time I was playing. I'll never forget. I always say that I'll never forget my first time I was in Leeds. The reception they gave it to me was magnificent. I remember we was playing against Crest Palace, and I did 5 minutes to full time. And my first touch, the way all the supporters, the way they were shouting my name, Yeboah, and I think that was marvelous.
I was asking you whether you made a habit of scoring very difficult and extraordinary, magnificent goals.
Yes. First of all, I can say that, the fantastic goals are scored. It's something that is very difficult for me to explain.
You've been listening to a download of the World Football Phone-In from Up All Night at BBC Radio 5 Live. You can put your questions live on Saturday mornings from 2:30am to 4am, or you can email us at upallnight, that's all one word, at bbc.co.uk. That's upallnight at bbc.co.uk.